Hello, good morning. I would like to make a video to talk about what I'm learning and what I just learned, and related to Mars and humans, the early humans, and construction. So there's a lot of surprising discoveries that I made by doing just Google researches. First of all, this morning in the news, they're talking about Mars landscape and how the rover has the most high definition image of Mars and the rocks that are there, because there's large variety of rocks and different types of rocks, just like on Earth. And so the best way to study Mars is to study Earth, because you have the same rocks there. So if you learn about the geology, then you can understand Mars a little bit better if you're understanding the past, because rocks have different characteristics, and they are telling the story of how they got there. So that's uh, that's the interesting part. When you see, even on Earth, you can see some places that have very unique rocks, and so you can compare and understand why this place is different than that place. And so to try to understand how the past was, and how the evolution changed from one place to another, because it's not the same everywhere. And so you have this very nice picture of a river flowing into a lake or some sort of ocean on Mars. And so you can really see that's the place where there's water that used to be there, and there's a delta, and this is like the birth of a human civilization, because on Earth, that's where humans started to build cities with the Nile, and they had flooding, annual flooding, that would deposit sediments and make the soil fertile, because the rest of the Egypt is just the desert and it's uninhabitable. But near the Nile, you have some fertile zone where the humans started to build cities and do agriculture and domestic animals. They started to invent writing and language. So this is where history started with the Egyptians. And you can find a similar place on Mars, but no life that we know of. But we can see that this is a river, just like the Nile, that is going into some sort of lake like the Mediterranean Ocean. And and you see all the sediment rocks that are there, that is it's been carried by the river and just accumulated there, deposited there. And so it's knowing what the composition of that soil or those rocks are made of is important to understand what's the history of that planet. And so just to know that, because was there ever life? Maybe now there's no life, but was there life in the past? Because there was water in the past, and rivers and lakes. So why not life? So you never know. Maybe on Earth you can see that the organic life has uh, transformed into rocks, like limestone rocks, sedimentary rocks, that you can see the layers that you have when dead life forms that are inside those rocks. So you can find fossils, and so that's what they're looking for. I think on Mars they're trying to check those rocks. There's different types of rocks, and they're very or unique and original formations that are affected by the wind. And so to understand, okay, what's the sand? What is it made of? And why is it different from that rock? And these rocks are different from that rock, that formation. That's There's a lot of beautiful landscapes, I think, on Mars that are very aesthetic. That Who knew? So very interesting discovery with astronomy, which has become more geology than astronomy. It's just on another planet, because now we know that there's thousands of planets all over the place. In just We can only see in this solar system and in this galaxy, but there are so many other galaxies that probably have the same solar systems. And so we try to understand how these solar systems are born, and how they start, and what's the process, and on the larger scale of to try to understand the process that we had gone through on Earth. So that was pretty insightful. And now we know that, yeah, uh, outer space has the same types of rocks that we have. They have wind, they have atmospheres, and oceans, and it's not necessarily what we thought that it was. So, so to guess the big question is there life on other planets? That's the main question. And I personally I wouldn't disagree with that. I think it's possible. So for the other topic, I wanted to talk about, because we're talking about rocks, and rocks are part of the construction materials that we use. We use gyps, and so having been in construction, I was exposed to a lot of those construction materials and toxic dust, and like I was what you're hearing in the back, those saws, I was doing that, and with steel metals, steel studs. And I just learned online that this is toxic, and it's the reason why I started to have depression, because it does affect your brain, it affects your lungs, and it gives you cancer. So it's not a surprise that my uncle died of cancer a few years after working that. So I'm just very happy that I don't have to do that anymore, and just feel upset that I was dragged into that, where the mindset was, if you're a JW, you don't have to worry about growing old, and you have only a couple of years left, so you can do whatever you want, and then you can just jump into paradise. So, and live eternally without any disease. So any abuse that you do with your body is not a big deal, because you're not going to be affected by it long term, because there's no such thing as long term. You just have a few years left. So that basically goes in hand with construction, where you're waiting for that intervention, the divine intervention, from day to day, so week to week, or year to year, and you're expecting that it's going to all end. So you're only there to be able to pay your rent, and you're affording the necessities, As for long term, you don't even think long term because long term is just paradise. So now I know that a lot of those, a lot of those materials, those construction materials, chips, dust, and metal stud dust. I'm thinking the other stuff also that I handled. These are really strong chemicals and toxic chemicals. So I was not wrong to think my perception as a teenager, a 16-year old, to be on that job site, to think that all my uh, senses were attacked. So the loudness of the, first of all, the loudness is too loud. The inhaling the toxic chemicals, and the really long hours, and the well carrying very heavy things, and etc. is just very very harsh, and never that I want to do that again. I'm thinking taping was a little bit better, but I still had the drywall dust, and with the sanding. And we never wore any mask, the protective mask. We were very thin ones that it's not protecting it at all. So just let let you know that. Now, don't be surprised if you're working construction. You're expecting something good out of it, and you don't get anything good out of it. You get health problems out of it. And I'm still recovering 20 years later, because it's been 20 years that I started working in residential. 20 years, it's almost 25 years that I started working construction, and I still suffer from it today. So if you're getting depression or those things, you understand where that's coming from. And there's no such thing as paradise or the reward that the JWs have been promising here all over the place. So uh, so just to let you know that that is information that when you get the education, you don't have to hit those blocks and suffer the consequences. So there, and yeah, those drywall, sheetrock, those things are actually, yeah, the rock. They're made of gyps. It's a type of rock, and they mix it with glass, and yeah, the inhaling of that is toxic, and so you should actually wear a mask all the time when you put sheetrock, which is something that we never did. My father and my uncle never did. Probably not a surprise that my uncle died from cancer. So, from what I know, I don't have cancer, but I did have depression, and sleep issues is also one of the symptoms. So, uh, trying to avoid that for the future. Thank you.